Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Bob Ingram. I'm a financial planner here at Center for Financial Planning. And as a comprehensive planning firm, we really appreciate the commitment it takes to pay for a college education. Really, for many families, this is one of the largest investments you'll make. And like most important life goals, college planning has many components from finding the right schools to the application process and of course, paying for it. Combine this with the changing landscape of college admissions and the financial aid process, and it certainly can seem like a daunting task. And so, our goal of this session is to help you better navigate this changing landscape. And so, we're very excited to have Heidi King join us from College Inside Track. Now, before I introduce Heidi, just a real quick housekeeping note. That's we're just in the interest of trying to keep within our allotted time here that we've set for tonight. We'll not be able to take questions, but if you do have questions, we absolutely want those. So please feel free to reach out to your planner or contact either of us. And we have the contact information we'll of course share with you at the end. But with that, let me introduce Heidi King. Heidi King is a college consultant focused on education and partnerships. Heidi's first career, actually, as an airline pilot of 20 plus years, taught her to manage important projects in time sensitive situations, arriving at the destination safely, on time, and efficiently. She applied those same skills when helping her two boys find their right college fit, and now does the same thing, helping thousands of families in her education role with College Inside Track. So, Heidi's a graduate of the University of Illinois and lives with her husband in the Chicagoland area. So, welcome, Heidi.
Bob, thank you so much. I appreciate being invited here to talk about the milestone event. And I look forward to, helping families understand some of the changes that have been happening in my space, which is that high school timeframe for planning for your college process and search.
Excellent. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, and so I'm happy to talk about the plan for today. Did you want to go swing right into the slide deck, or what works for you?
That sounds great. Let's go. Let's do that.
Well, again, thank you very much to the planners at Center for Financial Planning. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about something going to be very impactful, big changes in this space. And it will help you really understand a little bit more how to conquer college planning. There certainly have been many changes in this space. I am part of the education team at College Inside Track. And we've been around for the better part of 17 years. And when we work with families, it's always about the right fit the first time. Our goal is to help the kids understand their key criteria. And that is right academic fit for the student, right financial fit for the family, and then right social fit for the student, right? So those are those three hallmark pieces: academic fit, social fit for the student, and financial fit for the family. We do know that this is a stressful time. And if you're on tonight's educational webinar, it's probably because you care about somebody who is applying to college. So our goal today is to reduce the stress and also pull back the curtain a little bit on the process. And we'll go through some of the changes that have taken place so you understand what's happening kind of current day. And for sure, I think one thing that we understand is that it's maybe hard to pick out the exact right fit schools. It's challenging if you're going through it. It's a little bit stressful. And I think one way that we really can show this stress is by featuring what is the percentage of students that are transferring one time. And this isn't going from community college and up. This is actually going off to a four-year school and having something bubble up enough that you want to come home. And as Bob said, I'm a parent of two boys that are in school right now. And so I know how hard they worked to find right fit schools. So if your child is calling miserable, right? It's an emotional response. So, but there's another reason that this matters as well. So, you guys just go ahead and think upon yourselves. What do you think that statistic is, that percentage of transfer students that transfer at least one time? Bob, do you want to take a guess?
I was interestingly, I was kind of wondering if somewhere at least in the middle, like that, maybe as much as 25 or a third.
Yeah, right. And but it really is high.
Wow. Okay. Yep.
It's 38% of students are really trying to find that right fit the first time, but for whatever reason, they're calling mom and dad saying, I can't make it through the semester, or I want to come home at the semester. And again, the big reason, is we want them to be happy at school, but there's another reason why this matters. And it matters because it's costing us a ton of money if kids end up transferring, because the average cost of one transfer is about $14,000. And that's because potentially the classes that you have taken, the grades aren't good enough for them to go to the next school. Now, kids that transfer one time are actually at risk for transferring again. And I'll tell you how that plays out. It's because they come home, they level set, and then potentially they want to go away to school again. And then they go as a junior. And it is often that the friend groups and everything are established. And so it is very difficult, even with good intentions, to have that fit the second time, and then they end up coming home. So 2 transfers is about $24,000. And that extra amount is also because there is no way, if you're transferring twice, that you're able to graduate in 4 years. One last quiz. And I think we want to talk about another way things have changed so much since many of us applied to school back in the day. And this is something that Bob and his team are very familiar with, is the cost of college, right? Definitely in the news, something that we're working very hard to save for. But Bob, let me know, what do you think the percentage of tuition, how much has that increased nationwide since 1990?
I was gonna well, it's again somewhere at least in the middle.
Yeah. Well, right, because this is all that we're talking about. It's half of what we're talking about with college, is saving for it and making right fit choices. So we don't choose schools at the end of the day that we are not comfortable paying for. And for sure, it's in the news how much school has increased in cost. That public tuition increase is 213%, far outpacing many, many other industries. Private schools, even higher, 415%. I'm in the suburbs of Chicago, meet with a lot of families who choose Midwest schools. So this list reflects a lot of our Big Ten schools. I, again, graduated from University of Illinois, upwards of 500% for our tuition increase. You guys in Michigan, for University of Michigan, up over 1,000%. The highest that we have seen nationwide is UConn, up over 1,300%. That is the increase in tuition. And why does that matter?
That's staggering, just to put in perspective of the kind of growth, So for a family is looking at college savings, we're thinking we've got to beat inflation, just like you would for your retirement planning and
Yes.
other things. It's staggering, 1,000% or more that it's almost impossible to keep up without doing
Yes.
some major savings and significant planning.
Yeah. It is something that should be considered a monthly, not a one-time, hey, it's coming down in 2 years, right? Because if you're going to keep up with numbers that are 1 year of schools that are a sample across the country, I chose these very specifically. I chose them because when I meet with families and try to educate them on some of the process and answer their questions, we do a family consultation. Many, many, many kids will have sample schools like this on their list, Bob.
Mm.
I don't think we realize that those selective schools, those Ivy Plus type schools, have actually hit the $90,000 per year mark recently, right?
It's crazy. And that's
So
undergraduate. We're not even talking about graduate school advanced degree. This is undergraduate 4 year.
undergrad, undergrad and 1 year, right? That's not a 4 year cost. That is a 1 year for tuition, books, transportation, fees, food, right? So it is cost to attend, not just tuition. But I think the point of what I wanted families to understand is it's okay to have like a guardrail and some boundaries, right? Maybe philosophically, you just don't want to pay that much for school, and that is okay. We're going to talk today about ways to have those conversations with Bob and the team at Center for Financial Planning, but also have these conversations with your child. Because Big Ten schools tend to be upwards of $50,000 if they are out of state. So for those of you that are in Michigan, University of Michigan costs about $33,000 per year for total cost to attend. Bob and I chose another school that's in the area, which is Hope College, smaller private school that's just going to be a little bit more flexibly priced, right? Michigan, is inflexibly priced. Why? Because A, they have a line out the door, right? Lots of people wanting to go to University of Michigan. Some of those private schools that are in the middle, I've also chosen University of Denver. Just more flexibly priced, Bob. The average financial award for students at Hope College or for the University of Denver is over $30,000 off from their sticker price. So one thing that I want to highlight is that it doesn't serve us anymore to not understand and value the private school and how it's flexibly priced if it is a school that gives out merit. Because Northwestern is a private school, but they don't need to give out merit. So when you are selecting colleges and thinking about the cost, reevaluating and taking a look, yes, in-state schools are great, but there are a lot of flexibility options. And this is something that I did not really fully realize when I worked with my kids on this before I worked at college and sidetrack. Flexibly priced schools are ways to get that cost of attendance down into the amounts you potentially are more comfortable with. And that's just kind of good tips for you guys to know. Now, when families are trying to get help for figuring out school, one thing that they need help with really is figuring out how to pay for school. And there is a lot of confusion around financial aid and how to figure out, are you going to be able to tap into any of the differences and different types of financial assistance? So there are basically 3 different types of financial assistance when families need help paying for college. Need-based is unlocked primarily from your income. Merit-based has nothing to do with your income. Even if you make $1 million, schools that give out merit will give out scholarships, right? But there's a different access point for that money. And then a third access point for funds for school, and schools often call this financial aid, is a loan. But I think anybody will understand, I don't know how a loan seems like a scholarship because you have to pay it back. But when you look at your financial award letters, colleges typically list it in an award, right? So please understand, there are different minefields that are created with each, but all 3 are wonderful opportunities to help at the end of the day, plan and pay for college. We're going to talk about the need-based first, but we'll talk about merit-based assistance next. When families are trying to figure out, are we going to be need-based or not? You're going to fill out one and maybe a second form depending on the schools that you are applying to. The FAFSA is the primary form that we are going to be filling out to see if you are going to get need-based assistance. But it is also the form that you fill out for the student loan, which has nothing to do with need. Anybody can get that first loan. The FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. 4,000 schools take this form. The CSS profile is used by only 400 colleges. And so we're going to focus a little bit more on the FAFSA today, but the CSS profile is the College Scholarship Services, but they call it the CSS profile. It is for the highly selective schools. It is like quadruple the questions of the FAFSA. On average, it will take you 3 to 4 hours to fill out that form. It's like getting a root canal without any Novocaine. It's really an awful form. But, it does a deeper dive to see for those highly selective schools, are you going to be need-based? Either of those forms output a number that the government uses and the colleges use as well to determine their own institutional giving. Are you going to get anything from the college? So many of us have a myth that we're not going to fill out the FAFSA because we're not going to get any money. Now, that is true. You may not get government money, right? But many colleges will give out aid just because that cost is so high at those schools. So we just recommend that it's a very good process to do your first year. If you find that it really isn't helpful from them, the colleges, then we understand maybe you don't want to do it that second year, but it's good process to at least do it the first time.
And Heidi, that's a great point where, sometimes that for a first person that's going through this for the first time, they don't realize that, let's say they do have some aid, that is a process that you would go through each and every year from, each year that your child's in school.
Good point. You have to fill out this form every year to get the need-based aid. And you fill out this form every year to get access to the student loan. Student loan is so important. It is that first level of loan and by far the best terms. It's also the only loan your student can get without mom and dad's co-signature. Lots of reasons to think positively about that student loan from the FAFSA. And yeah, you have to fill it out every year in order to get the money. And you can't go to previous year's money to get it. So if you need it junior year, you can't go back to your sophomore or your freshman year funds to get it. You have to consider that year by year by year process. So it is so important to understand, are we going to be need-based or not? And that really is primarily based on mom and dad's income. So Bob or myself, we could do a FAFSA forecast for you, right? Depending on the price of the school, it shows up somewhere between about 235 to 280 AGI. When you're above 280 AGI, that adjusted gross income, you are pretty much not going to be need-based at any school. But if you make less than that, there may be strategies that Bob and the team can help you with, right? Making sure that your assets are actually sitting in the right places. Because FAFSA evaluates your assets, your child's assets, the parental assets differently, right? And so let's talk about that. A child's assets, if it is a bank account, is assessed 4 times higher than mom and dad's. So if you're finding that you might be need-based, let's talk and have a meeting with Bob. So you make sure that you're placing the money strategically that senior year of high school. Assets are a flashpoint on the FAFSA for one day. Okay, so it's really important that you plan ahead of time because they're going to look at it for one day snapshot. So parents' bank accounts, checking accounts, assessed for FAFSA at 5.64% of the total. The child's assets, if Bob has an UGMA or an UPMA set up, those are wonderful savings vehicles. But FAFSA is just assessing those a little bit higher. So if you're going to be need-based, we suggest using those first and getting those off the books, right? Now, a little bit about the FAFSA and some assumptions that we make. We assume that our assets are a major influencer on this form, and they are simply not. The biggest influencer is mom and dad's income or household income. The household income is assessed at 47% year to year for FAFSA. And since we're not going to quit our jobs for the purposes of FAFSA, some of these other strategies are so much more important to keep you and understand your lane. Now, FAFSA is not including, and so please do not report it on your FAFSA online form. No qualified retirement accounts. And what are those? Just as a refresh, your 401k, right? Cash value of a life insurance. Your 529s that parents have are in fact considered. But the other savings vehicles in terms of your 401k, your IRA, and that cash value of the life insurance, please do not overreport. That is one of the biggest mistakes that we see on the FAFSA form, is that families tend to overreport. And when they're overreporting, it is the assets and then your value of your home. So you don't put the value of the home on that form as well. Did we have any questions, Bob, on that, or are we going to move right into the FAFSA changes?
Yeah, you know what? Just I guess a couple of things, and especially for folks that maybe this is a first time or is spend a little bit of time. What are the major documents? So some of the things
Yeah,
you do need to report. What to be able to have in place so that you can go through the form as quickly as possible. I know you're going to
yeah.
be talking about some of the changes into the form this year, but some of the main documents you really want to have in place when you're going through it.
Good question. This year and any year that you're going to be doing your FAFSA, you do need the completed taxes from the last tax year, right? So just to use this year as an example, 2022 was the last tax year. So even if you have an extension, you cannot fill out the FAFSA until that tax form is done. So completed tax form. You will need the values of your bank accounts, of your brokerage accounts, because they do ask that you put that on the form. And it does ask for your real estate and some of your other assets. And that will vary depending about your circumstance. If you're a small business owner, you have to put some on. So I would say, if you have any questions, that either Bob or I are more than happy to kind of have a conversation with you about what documents you need, but it would be the accounts that you need to report. You need the balances for that day that you're inputting. And for your taxes, you need the last completed tax year. Okay. There are some changes with the FAFSA this year. It's as a result of some federal legislation. And frankly, it's a government form. It reads like a government form, and it needed to be updated, right? So good news, it's going to go from 108 questions down to about 36 to 40, right? So way easier to fill out than that CSS profile. But there are some pretty big changes that have happened because of the simplification. And I'm going to highlight the 4 big ones. We used to get a discount for having multiple kids in at college at the same time. But for this fall's FAFSA and then going forward, multiple kids in school at the same time will not be a factor. There will be no more discount for that. If divorce is part of your family structure, the FAFSA required one of the parents to report their income. It used to be that the income that was used was where the child lived the majority of time. Now it is switching to who is providing more material support. And please understand, the FAFSA expects you to list household income. So it may not just be one parent, it may also be a new spouse's income as well. Another change is that small businesses used to be excluded from including their assets. If you had a small business, it was defined as 100 employees or less. We do not know why, but they left out the 100 employees. We assume this is one of those mistakes in the form. The form is not out yet for this year. We have seen the beta version. There are definite whispers that they are trying to change this. The form is going to be delayed this year from the first week of October. October 1st is typically the launch date. This year it will be December. Okay, it is in flux right now. We are hoping that they will adjust the small business. If they don't, there will be some strategies that you need to review with Bob about what specifically do you put on this form. So please reach out to him if you've got one of those small businesses, because you will have to report assets, but there is some flexibility in how you report that, right? And Bob and I do professional development on this. So lean into your team, because they can help you through some of these so you do not over-report stuff. Good news. This is really good news. The ability for grandparents or anybody outside the nuclear family. So we call it grandparents, but it's aunts, uncles. It could be a godparent or just one of your best friends from college who has decided to contribute to help your student pay for school. It used to be that a gift from a grandparent or the other segments would negatively affect need, right? And this would often backfire on the whole point of the help, right? Let's just say $20,000. If grandma and grandpa gifted $20,000, because of the way the FAFSA looks at different income, students' income is assessed for FAFSA purposes at 50%. Now, anything above $7,500 for student income needs to be reported on the FAFSA. It is considered in the formula. But now anything up to 7,500 is protected, right? Which is good, right? Kids working hard, they don't want every dollar from, their job at Chick-fil-A included in this formula. So they have a income protection. But if you can imagine grandparents giving $20,000, half of it would then be assessed as a gift, so at $10,000. So immediately that pulls that child out of the need-based formula. Now, it doesn't matter. You can gift away. You can gift away in a 529. Generational wealth planning is something that Bob and the team do a great job with. So lean into them to kind of figure out that component, what options you have for your family, how many grandkids, what does it look like from a 529 or just a straight gift. He's really happy to kind of talk to you about those opportunities that we see.
And what's really interesting, Heidi, about that point too, I'm sure, is could it change the strategy of particularly when grandparents gift or when you'd use certain dollars from maybe one savings plan or another? For example, parents of the student have a 529 plan. They would oftentimes a goal would be to spend that first and let the grandparents then come in the
True.
later college years,
True.
because by the time that income hits the student, they're already gone through school. They don't have to
Right.
file when that income comes in because of the lag time of looking back at the income, right?
True.
So now
And
that planning could now much more flexible now.
totally much more flexible, right? No negative impact. And a matter of fact, you might want to consider using grandma and grandpa's gifts first, because some of our 529 plans, I'm raising my hand, have been a little challenged with the market. So we are definitely using those strategies, Bob, as well. Looking at where and when to take certain monies, just from a growth perspective. So now we're going to change. We've talked a lot about the need, but you're really either going to be need-based or not, right? Based on mom and dad's income. But none of us want to overspend, right? When we're the purchase of college, when we're thinking about that big purchase. So let's talk about ways that we see college to be potentially inexpensive, or what are the options for the education in general. Typical paths are these four. Choosing a public school 4 years right out of high school. Or are we going to do 2 years of community college and then transfer? Should we start out at a public college and then transfer to our more expensive private school? Or should we start at and then finish at a private institution? Now, hopefully, through some of the stuff that I've talked about, we're learning that there are flexibly priced and inflexibly priced schools. So this really can be a case-by-case strategy for your family, right? For sure, any of those segments can be true based on the circumstances. The one thing we do know, that leaning into picking right fit schools for your student from an academic perspective, what they want to study, is it competitive? Are they supported academically, socially? Do they have a big school, small school, medium school? Is it a faith-based component? Urban setting. Making sure that they understand their options, right? For them, not just what their friends are doing. And then really investigating and researching more schools and broadening the list of schools. We suggest 6 to 10 schools or 6 to 12 schools to apply to. Anything more than 12 is just really, really, really challenging from a time perspective for the kids. It doesn't suit us anymore to just think of it as, I perceive our state school to be the least expensive. I'm a U of I grad. My mom and dad were U of I grads. My uncle was a professor in the business school at, you guessed it, U of I. My aunt, my uncle, I could go on. I thought my kids were going to go to U of I, and it was going to be the cheapest option for us. But little did I know that there were great opportunities to find flexibly priced schools. And so my second one wound up at one of those schools that looks like it has a really high sticker price, but for sure came in at a pricing less than our state flagship school. So renew the way you're thinking about this. And how are we planning for scholarships, right? Because again, not everybody, the idea of being strategic on pricing structure for college is just smart. If you're talking about a $200,000 plus purchase potentially, right? So when I meet with families, right, and I love this part of my job, we do a consultation where we talk about questions that they have. And I would say the biggest question is, where do we find the best opportunities for scholarships, right? So let's talk about it. Where do we see impactful money? And from a ROI for your time, where should you even look for scholarships in the first place? We worked with about 250 students last year. So we see a lot of returns and financial award letters. By far, the biggest gifters are colleges themselves. And that's because when a college gives out an award, they typically do it in a 4-year option. These are renewable scholarships that come in a year package, but are renewable. So they add up to a 4-year opportunity. So the best scholarships come from knowing who's giving out scholarships from a school perspective and then applying to them specifically. Building that right fit list with the intentionality is by far the best way to find impactful scholarships. So that's the first way. But ironically, colleges are number 1 and 2 on the list. And this is interesting. I didn't know this as much, but many schools have opportunities for departmental scholarships as well. So not just by building the list based on my child does amazing things, and I think you will give them scholarship dollars. However, there's another way that the colleges give out money also, right? And this is through that acceptance time frame, because when you get accepted into the school, there will be a link in your financial award package. Here's the thing, kids miss these awards. Why? Or the opportunity to get them. It's because they come in their emails first. And I can tell you that my 17-year-old sons were not checking their email every day, right? They were checking Instagram hourly, maybe, but doggone it, they don't check their email every day yet. So good process, right? We're going to start checking that email every day because colleges are going to correspond with them because they're putting their emails down on the applications. Look in those emails because when they are accepted, there will be an opportunity to hit a link for the financial opportunities within the school. And why does this matter? Well, it matters because when they gift, again, it'll be in a 4-year opportunity, a renewable scholarship. Local scholarships are great. It may be from your employer. It may be from a Rotary. Great opportunities to find these are typically through your high school guidance center, right? Lean into them. They have a list typical of different places within your community that will give out scholarships, right? So it makes it organized for you. However, those average awards that we see are typically between $500, maybe $1,000 if you're lucky. And it is not renewable. It is not a per year thing. It is a one-time gift, one-time opportunity that you can win with an application that typically requires an essay and time. But hey, I'm saying take the time because far fewer people are applying to these than these. Please don't Google scholarships and just apply randomly. On average, statistics show that you have to apply to between 50 and 80 to win an average award of only $500. You're better off getting a job. When we're meeting with these families, it is very interesting to see and to know, how do we even evaluate these schools and are they going to be impactful with their scholarships? Here is how you determine, is a school going to be one of those schools that is flexibly priced, right? Because not every school will give out money for great grades. They don't need to. Northwestern has a line out the door, right? Columbia, same thing. So, but when you see those schools that are not super selective, so if their selectivity rate is 15% or less, they are not going to give out a ton of merit. If they are 15% or better, then those are the schools you're looking for. They can give out merit. How do you evaluate? Is your child going to be one of those kids where you're looking at their grades and their ACT, SAT test scores, and are those in that upper quarter? Do they have extracurriculars the college cares about? You know, sports, band, arts, forensic, other things, right? What does the college care about? When they care about something, that is when they decide to open their institutional dollars and give you opportunities for financial merit. So when we see a lot of these are the actual line items that we see people getting money for from the colleges that they are applying to, right? Our kids, 250 kids went through our program last year. They earned $23 million worth of scholarships, applying to, on average, 6 to 12 schools. So we really do get to see a lot of financial award letters. And Bob and I were talking about this earlier. It's really fascinating to see what a college is giving money for. Demonstrated
Really,
interest.
really, puts a new spin on the idea of paying for good grades, huh? A little extra incentive for those A's.
True, right? It is still very relevant. It's relevant from acceptance, and it's just relevant from ROI for getting those A's as opposed to the B or C, right? Taking a rigorous class like an AP, potentially taking the ACT and SAT, understanding that that is very much in flux, but we see a benefit. And we see some schools going back to test required, like Purdue, MIT. So understand that these are different segments that you can get money these days in the current landscape. Trends. Test optional landscape should be something that every family gets to evaluate. If it suits you, prep can help. And yes, it can help in your admissions. The Kelley School of Business in Indiana, if you get a 30 on your ACT, you will actually get direct admit into that school. So understand there are some definite trends that we see that may be a benefit for your families to consider. And understand with the test optional landscape, just since the pandemic, applications are up like spaghetti on a wall, 32% rise since 2020 alone. And that is playing out not only in those top tier, the tier 1 schools, but the tier 2 in it of itself, because people are applying test optional and throwing their hat in the ring at many schools that they wouldn't normally have been able to get into.
And Heidi, just, as an example, I don't know if you have any, kind of specific things that you do see of those kinds of things, especially with the competitive landscape that we're, seeing,
Yeah.
especially in the last few years, the kinds of extracurriculars, it may not be enough anymore to just be involved in a school activity or a sports team, or even be a leadership role. I mean, are you seeing some things that really, like, this is a great example of a standout type of, um, let's say, not just activity, but a talent or something that makes you that much more attractive for merit?
Yeah, I think that the things that we see in holistic or mission review, the data, I was on professional development with an admissions officer from Harvard listening. When they evaluate their pool of applicants, they really feel like 4 in 5, if they picked any of those, right? That's 80% of the kids that apply would be just fine going to school. But they can only pick a certain amount of them, right? They only end up picking 1 in 6. So how do you get to be the 1 in 6 just out of that 4 in 5 pool, right? And at some point, that is just leaning into who you are and then singing it, to the hills. How are you involved? What was your leadership role, or what was your takeaway? How did you make an impact? And then talking about that in your application is so very, very important, because they already have the data that you are a good student, that you have taken the APs, and that you passed that ACT or SAT. What they are really evaluating is how you're telling your story in your application, and how you present that to admissions is a huge difference maker in whether or not you're going to get in or not. Now, tips. We do see testing still playing a role. Understand there are opportunities for you to just use this per school, and potentially, depending on your major, capacity constrained majors like engineering, computer science, business, nursing. It may make an impact for you to take a second look at that ACT and SAT. Colleges view them separately, agnostically. Neither test matters, is what I'm saying. But we do see that it matters for some schools that you consider testing part of your strategy. New test for the SAT next year. It's going to be digital and shorter. Lots of changes in my world. SAT is going to go from about 3 hours to 2 hours next spring. And you don't need to take it 10 times. We see your goal score after about the 3rd time, right? When we are considering colleges, understand that this is a business decision for you. It's not just, hey, school, you're so lucky, to get an offer from them, right? But it's, hey, school, what are you going to do for us, my child? What are the opportunities for an internship? What are the opportunities for research? What are the opportunities to be in academic clubs? and get to evaluate that on a tour, right? Look at those opportunities of what each college does for recruiting. Who comes here? Where would they get a job? Do you have a co-op? What is a co-op, right? Ask those questions on those tours. You will feel so much more informed. Last tip, understand that there is an opportunity to have a 4-year discussion and create a family philosophy. Understand that there's an opportunity to kind of talk about this earlier into the process. We recommend you meet with Bob and his team junior year, even sophomore year in high school, to understand the current landscape and how you want to divide and conquer, and then figure out right fit schools from there.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talked about paying and that plan of the strategy, and a lot of that can be done. It's all the way up through school, but kind of making those, again, certainly the sooner the better, and why we encourage parents and grandparents to start getting involved in college planning before. A lot of times you'll know whether your child or grandchild is even going to go to college and where they may go, but just to be able to start thinking about these different elements and components early on.
Yeah, absolutely. See, what ends up happening, we see more often than not, is the families that are not thinking about it early enough end up letting the kids apply and saying they will figure it out once they get into the schools. And it honestly is a recipe for disaster, right? I know that colleges do not make it transparent what they are going to cost. But the sooner that you figure out what your budget is, just apply to more schools that are within that flexibly priced range. And it's really, that is the launch of a successful college search, in our opinion, including that financial component junior or sophomore year, just earlier than we've already gotten in. Now, what do we do with our one choice? So a little bit about how we help. We help families through that purchase, just like you would have a purchase of a home, right? College is statistically the second biggest purchase a family will make, other than the purchase of their home. We help in 3 key ways. We help you find that right fit. Students that work with us do not transfer at 38%, they transfer at 4%. We help you make sure that you get the best price for schools that are on your list. And we love being that neutral third party. This is something that is a struggle for families, right? And we love to be part of the solution and get to be a trusted advisor in that process. One way that I can help is by offering a free family consultation, an hour, to talk about questions that we may not have covered today, right? Sit down over Zoom. We can do a FAFSA forecast, and I can tell you if you're going to be need-based or not, and then we can make suggestions. We can do it with Bob and his team, and I'm happy to do that. Should you want to talk about that, you can really reach out to Bob, and we'll loop in on this conversation together. And like I said, best time frame to do that is probably junior or sophomore year. And lean into some of the other things that we have as well. Parent newsletters, Facebook, lots of great content on our blog. Awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Heidi. We really appreciate, obviously, your time and all of your great information and insights. I think, a lot of different takeaways from today, but really the idea, of course, as a planner and, being planning nerds and thinking about all these things, the idea of college planning, you think, well, apply to some colleges, and then there's, save for college. And I think really today a key message is college planning is about integrating all of those elements, that it really is, one doesn't begin with the other. Thinking about college financing and cost plays into the college search process. And that in turn plays into what could the college cost and how much do you need to plan for and save for, and ultimately how you do pay for it, all comes together. So having a comprehensive college plan is so critical, just as you would to have a financial plan, a retirement income plan, et cetera, for your other important life goals. So if you wouldn't mind, just real quick, a couple of key things in case people needed to contact us. So certainly, as clients of the center, if you have questions, want to have these conversations or develop those conversations, of course, I'm sure you're having those conversations with your planners, but reach out to your planner. If you're new to the center, certainly you can reach out to Heidi and the folks at College Inside Track, but also, feel free to leverage us as a great resource to kind of have those conversations around what is your overall college planning, college funding strategy? What questions do you have? Are there any gaps? And how does this fit into your overall financial planning and other needs? We will also offer, a fee waived consultation, 30 to 60 minutes to kind of review your own questions and just take advantage of an hour of our time to see if you're doing the right things and if there's any ways that we can kind of help you or steer you in the right direction, provide other resources to you along the way. For other resources, certainly follow us. Centerfinplan.com. We have our blog page, our money-centered blog with regular content on all different financial topics, including college planning. Receive our newsletter invitation to different events, such as webinars like this. We have some upcoming events. We have in October around the healthcare and Medicare, navigating the Medicare maze, and also pre-retiree healthcare webinar. We have practical guide to financial wellness webinar. And then toward the end of the quarter, in the fourth quarter, we're having our annual year-end tax and planning webinar, which is usually one of the most popular. And I'll selfishly plug that since I'll be one of the co-hosts for that webinar. So tune into some of those events coming up. And again, thank you so much, Heidi. Yeah. Anything else that you wanted to share or leave?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity, Bob. That is an impressive lineup of things that you offer for the families that are working with you. And I love the continuing ed and the opportunities for your families to learn. Really helps, really helps.
Well, great. We really appreciate it and so glad that you were able to join us today. Yeah. And on behalf of myself and everybody here at the center, thank you everybody for attending and have a wonderful rest of the quarter and rest of the year.
Awesome. Thanks so much.